بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله وكفى وسلام على عباده الذين اصطفى أما بعد. Brothers and sisters, alhamdulillah, this evening we will focus on a female companion of Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and this one's a little bit unique because not only is she a companion, but she is the beloved daughter of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, who is Fatimah bint Muhammad radiyallahu anha. So we'll look at a few lessons from her life, inshaAllah, and see what sort of things we could take from her life, inshaAllah. And Fatimah radiallahu anha, firstly, she was born before even the first revelation. So before the Prophet ﷺ was granted prophethood, Fatimah radiallahu anha was already born. And that's not really mentioned so much in Sirah, because as you know, as soon as we hear about the Prophet ﷺ and the first revelation, he goes home to who? Khadija radiallahu. There was also a little toddler toddling around in the house. Subhanallah. And so she was born before the first revelation. Obviously her mother was Khadija radiallahu anha. And scholars, they write, it was approximately 5 years before the Prophet ﷺ migrated to Medina. And Fatimah radiallahu anha, she had 3 sisters, so these are all the Prophet ﷺ's children. So she had 3 sisters, one was Zainab, Kulthum, and Ruqayya, and so there were 4 of them in total, and 3 brothers, or 2 brothers from Khadija radiallahu anha, who were Qasim and Abdullah, and she also had Ibrahim. But all of them, they passed away whilst the Prophet ﷺ was still alive, except for her, except for Fatimah. So when the Prophet ﷺ passed away, she didn't have any brothers or sisters, right? Especially the brothers, they passed away very young. So Fatimah radiallahu anha was the only one left when the Prophet ﷺ passed away. And she was only 5 years old when her mother died, when Khadija radiallahu anha passed away. Yeah? So only 5 years old. And the Prophet ﷺ, and what I find incredible, after Khadija passed away, it was only them 2 in the house for a while, the Prophet ﷺ and Fatimah. So she built this extra strong bond with the Prophet ﷺ as a result of that. Allahu Akbar. And one day, you know, in her youth, in these days of early days after the Prophet ﷺ received revelation, there's a very famous incident that the Prophet ﷺ, Ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anhu, he narrates that once the Prophet ﷺ was praying in front of the Kaaba, and Abu Jahl and his group, they used to always try and mock the Prophet ﷺ and cause hardship. So once they were discussing amongst themselves, we need to do something to Muhammad ﷺ. So they decided, Abu Jahl and other few people, that we're going to put the insides and the intestines of a camel on top of the Prophet ﷺ when he's praying. Let's do that. You know, nowadays we have all sorts of silly pranks, isn't it? SubhanAllah. So to them it was a prank. And it was a disgusting prank, right? A horrible prank. That whilst the Prophet ﷺ is praying, we're going to put some insides of a camel and things which are very impure on top of the Prophet ﷺ. So they decided to do that. And when the Prophet ﷺ went into sujood, that is when they put a whole load of intestines on the Prophet ﷺ's back. And Abdul ibn Mas'ud, he narrates that I was watching this, I couldn't do anything. I didn't have the power and courage to move forward and help the Prophet ﷺ. I just couldn't do anything. And then he says, but then on the side, because the Prophet ﷺ, he wasn't raising his head, he wasn't lifting it. He said, on the side I saw Fatimah, little child, toddling along, walking, and she went to the Prophet ﷺ and she cleaned it up and she moved it away from his body, right? And then she was crying. Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, he narrates that she was crying. Obviously you can imagine a little kid, when a child, especially that age, when they see their parents are upset, then they also get upset and they sometimes get angry. Right? I think we would all see this in our children. That when the child sees the parents upset, then the child gets upset. So here, not only has she seen him upset, well, she doesn't know how upset he is because he's in sujood, he's seen so much filth go on top of the Prophet ﷺ, so she was crying, but she removed it. Allahu Akbar. And then after the Prophet ﷺ, when he finished, he told her, don't cry, and he consoled her. And then the Prophet ﷺ, he actually made a dua, right? And he said, oh Allah, deal with the Quraysh. Sort them out. 3 times. Oh Allah, deal with the Quraysh. Oh Allah, deal with the Quraysh. 3 times. And when Abu Jahl and his group heard this, they got so scared. Because they all knew the Prophet ﷺ was a special person. So they got so scared because here we have Muhammad ﷺ making dua, that's number 1. And he's making dua in a sacred land. Right? So they got scared and then they sought forgiveness and they said, we're not going to do that again and blah blah blah. But Fatimah radiallahu anha was the one who was courageous enough to go and assist her father, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then. And one of her names, as she grew older, was Zahra. That's why sometimes when we refer to her, we say Fatimah to Zahra, right? Which means the splendid one, or the one with the rose cheeks, right? The splendid one because of her beauty and elegance, as well as she had rose cheeks like the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam had rose cheeks, subhanallah. And Aisha radiallahu anha actually says, I have never seen anyone who resembled the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in his speech and in his character than Fatimah radiallahu anha. She was a carbon copy of her father, Allahu Akbar, Fatimah radiallahu anha. And that is why Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said towards the end of his life as well, that Fatima is Sayyidatu Nisa'i Ahli al-Jannah. She is the queen, subhanallah, of the women of paradise. She's going to be the leader, right? She's going to be right up there, the queen, the leader. Except there's someone who's higher than Fatima in the women. Not Aisha, not Asiya, not Khadija. From the women, from all of the women, who's the greatest woman? Maryam. Yeah, Maryam, may Allah be pleased with her. So the Prophet ﷺ, so Fatima, in this hadith, she herself actually specifies that the Prophet ﷺ referred to her as the queen of Jannah, of the women of Jannah, except Maryam is higher. Subhanallah. And there's a hadith where the Prophet ﷺ said the best women in the entire world are 4. In the entire world, 4 women are the best. Number 1, there's Maryam, obviously. Fatima. Aisha. Not in this hadith. Asiya. Fir'aun's wife, and Khadija. Those 4. So Maryam, Asiya, Fatima, and Khadija radiallahu anhum. They are the 4 greatest women in Islam. Subhanallah. And Fatima's name is there. And she's very young. When these ahadith are being narrated, she's very young. Absolute maximum should be in her 20s. Imagine being in your 20s and being called the greatest. Nowadays we have these recognition, isn't it? These awards, like Entrepreneur of the Year, and what was it, Man of the Year, and there's other titles like Chef of the Year, and this, that, and the other. Subhanallah. But she was given that title and that award when she was in her 20s. She's not lived for that long, Allahu Akbar. And that is the effect that she had on the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And that is why the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, Fatima is a part of me. Whoever angers her, angers me. So whoever makes her angry, they've made me angry. That is the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam saying that, Allahu Akbar. Now Fatima, she married when she, was it last week or the week before, when we talked about Aisha and the age of marriage, right?
Oh, yeah.
Fatima, when she reached around 15 years old, that is when proposals started coming. And we covered this in Seerah when we did Seerah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So proposals started coming when she was around 15. Now a lot of proposals came, even by the likes of Abu Bakr, Umar radiallahu anhu. They wanted to marry the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam's daughter. Understandable. But he was always irresponsible. He didn't say anything. And some people would come and he'd say, you're a bit too old. Some people would come, he wouldn't say anything. Subhanallah. So then Ali radiallahu anh, he was around 21, because he's young. So Ali radiallahu anh, he was looking to get married, but he didn't have anything. You know, a lot of times we have youngsters, they're looking to get married, and the only thing that's stopping them is finance. Not ready yet. Not ready yet. Then they hit the 30 mark, and then 35, and then 40. Not ready yet. Not ready yet. Not ready yet. And then when they have the finance, then it's too late. Subhanallah. Right? So Ali was in that predicament. He was 21, which is quite old in those days, if you think about it. Right? He was looking to get married. But then he, in one narration, he went to the Prophet ﷺ to ask, and he asked about Fatimah. In another narration, he went there and he basically, you know, sometimes this happens a lot in class, right, in school, where as soon as you enter the classroom, let's say you walk into the classroom, and let's say you have year 7, and then right before the lessons even started, so the odd time here and there, you'll have 1 or 2 students come up to you before the lesson has started. And as soon as they come up to me, do you know the first thing that comes to my mind?
They haven't prepared.
So they're not prepared, they're not ready. They're not ready, right? If they're set a homework task, I know straight away they're going to tell me, so I haven't done the homework. That's what usually happens, right? If they come as soon as they come in to the room, right? So they don't even have to say anything, and I'll ask, why? Why have you not done it, right? You just know they don't have to say anything. So Ali radiallahu anh, he's at this age, he's looking to get married. So he comes up to the Prophet ﷺ, and the Prophet ﷺ is receiving proposals for Fatimah. So Ali radiallahu anh, he sat there and is too shy to say anything. But the Prophet ﷺ, he asked him, are you here about Fatimah? Ali radiallahu anh said yes. So he knew, subhanallah, right, that Ali radiallahu anh wants to ask about his daughter. So then the Prophet ﷺ, he said, okay, that's fine. Do you have anything to give as mahr, as dowry? Right? Because obviously when we get married, we have to give a mahr to the wife. What does the wife have to give to the husband in terms of exchanging gifts?
Good food. Lifetime.
For the wife, yeah. SubhanAllah. The husband doesn't have to give anything. Sorry, the wife doesn't have to give anything in terms of something which is fixed. But the husband has to give the mahr and dowry as a gift, as Allah mentions in Surah Nisa. Right? So the Prophet ﷺ asked him that, do you have anything? And he said, no, Ya Rasulullah, I don't have anything. I remember we were saying that people are delaying marriage because they don't have anything. So he didn't have enough for a mahr. Subhanallah. And that's very important. You know, people now, they don't save up for weddings, they save up for mahr. Right? I still remember, you know, when we go to certain places, I have actually seen real life people saving up for mahr. And they're saying that they're saving up for mahr. Because the family, the sister that they want to marry, her father is asking for a crazy amount. It's like a business or something. Subhanallah. And that is true. 100% true. They are saving up for mahr. Allahu Akbar. So Ali radiallahu anh said, no, I don't have anything. And on the point of mahr, you know, nowadays there's 2 attitudes to mahr. One is, there's no regard for mahr whatsoever. Right? The nikah is about to happen in 1 minute and they still haven't even decided the mahr. That's one extreme where they're just not bothered. Oh, there's a mahr. What is a mahr? You don't know what a mahr is. Can we just give anything? And they've completely taken away the value. That's one extreme. And then you've got the other extreme where it's just crazy and subhanAllah, there's so much hardship on the groom even before they've married. Allahu Akbar. And so we have to be moderate. You know, anything of value can be a mahr in essence. Anything of value, right? Anything of value. So even if your pen is of value, you can give that as a mahr if the wife accepts. As long as the wife accepts, inshallah, anything of value. And so the Prophet ﷺ, he basically asked, do you have anything? No, I don't have anything. So then the Prophet ﷺ asked, where is that body armor that you got in the Battle of Badr? You know, after the Battle of Badr, the spoils of war was given out. So you were given some armor, where is that? Have you still got that? He said, yeah, but it's not really worth that much. He said, okay, what you should do, go and sell it in the market. Whatever you get, you can give that as mahar. Whatever you get. Subhanallah. So then Ali radiallahu anh, and this is, he's not giving any pressure to Ali radiallahu anh. He's looked at what he has, his means, and he said, whatever you can give, you give. Allah Akbar. That's a very important lesson for future father-in-laws, inshaAllah. Inshallah. Yeah, that's a very, very important lesson, because it's usually the father-in-laws, isn't it, that put all the pressure on. My daughter got, my next door neighbour or my cousin, they got £20,000 for their daughter, so I need to get £20,000 for my daughter. And £20,000 is like a normal amount in some families. And is that £20,000 actually paid? I very much doubt it, man. It's just about a sense of pride in declaring how much. Because it's now become how much value is on the daughter's head, which is very, very unfortunate. That's not what mahar is. It's in essence a gift which Allah has put upon the groom to give to the wife, right? And that's all there is to it. Allahu Akbar. So he said, take it to the market and sell it. So then Ali radiallahu anh, he went to the market with his armor and he sold it. Who did he sell it to? Uthman went and bought it. Uthman went and bought the armor because he found out what's happening, that Ali needs some mahar money, so he bought it for 480 dirhams. 480, which is a lot. 480 dirhams he bought it for, and he took the armor. And then as Ali was leaving, if you remember in Uthman radiallahu anhu, I think we covered it, Uthman was a very skinny, frail companion. Was he in the battles and was he into all the fighting? No. You get those people, not everyone is for fighting. Like me, for example, right? And some who just can't lift a weight at all, right? Like some brothers here, mashallah, right? Mashallah.
I think you've just been modest.
No, I'm not being modest, trust me. I'm not being modest. Right? You got brothers, mashallah, like yourselves. You can lift, you do the weights and you got the muscles. But no, that's not for everyone. So Uthman was from that group that they just weren't into all of that stuff. Right? So Uthman, he's got this armor, what's he going to do with it? So then he said to Ali, you know what? I'm not going to use it, you might as well just take it back and keep the money that I gave. So then Ali radiallahu anh, he went back with the armor and with the money on top. 480 dirhams, and he gave it to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam then sent Bilal radiallahu anh to get some perfume and clothing from it. Allahu Akbar. So he used part of that money to get some perfume as well. Subhanallah. To make it a little special occasion. But that is the mahar that was given to Fatimah radiallahu anha. Around 480 silver dirhams. Right? So that is why when people get married, we sometimes say mahar Fatimah, yeah? Is that what you're going to...
I was going to say, it's not to be controversial, but how much of us say, how much of us say Fatimah radiallahu anha had in this marriage?
Very good question, Masha. We're going to get to that,
okay.
Inshallah. So, when people get married, they usually say mahar Fatimah. That the mahar that was given to Fatimah radiallahu anha. Now, Fatimah radiallahu anha, she, in the narrations that is mentioned by her, there are no ahadith, and there's very few ahadith by Fatimah as well. The narrations that we hear, there's no narrations as such from the marriage that she had with Ali radiallahu anha. But what we know, 100%, her consent was given, that she agreed, because the Prophet ﷺ said it in other ahadith that the daughter, the wife, has to be okay with that. That is how we know Fatima, definitely. Otherwise the Prophet ﷺ wouldn't say a hadith like that. So when we say mahar, the daughter has to be okay with it. So then usually, let's say if a person wanted to, I can't give my example, otherwise my wife's going to go a bit crazy, right? So let's say if this person wanted to get married and then they were negotiating and discussing the mahar, then it's the father-in-law, his father-in-law's duty to go and say it to the daughter that, do you want, that's why, when the nikah is being done, the imam will generally say, do you accept such and such a person to be your husband, accepting a mahar of £100, for example. So that's usually said in the nikah, at the time of the nikah, and then obviously the person who is representing the wife or the wife herself should say yes. Alright, that is how it works. So that is how we know that she approved of that, inshaAllah. But that is the Mahr al-Fatimi, generally 480 dirhams, silver dirhams. And when it comes to silver dirhams, one silver dirham is equal to around 3.5 or 3 grams approximately, 3.06 grams to be precise, one silver dirham. Around if you round it up, 3 grams of silver. So if you have 480 silver dirhams, you have to times 3 grams by 480, which is?
How much is 3 grams worth?
So 3 grams or 3.06 grams of silver, around 1500. Let's say around 1500. I think it's around 1480 or like that, yeah? 14. How much is a gram of silver now? 50p? So if we say it's 50p, that's a lot, isn't it? Is it gone high? Yeah. So if you say 50p, 50 pence is 1 gram, so you times 50 by, let's say, 1470. So if you times 0.50 by 1470, how much is that?
735.
735. That is absolute max. Mahr al-Fatimi. So that is if 1 gram is 50 pence, right? But if we base it on the silver rate, how much 1 gram is, that is why it changes every so often. How often does it change the price?
Silver? I don't think we don't sell much
Yeah.
silver, so gold.
How often does gold change? Is it every day? Up and down. So I'm sure it's similar with silver. So it changes up every day. So it's not going to be, so the Mahr al-Fatimi that he would have given would be different to what I would have given because it changes, inshaAllah. But it's around, I think it's around between 580 and 650, around that much. It's been like that for the past year or so. It doesn't go up that much. I think usually people just round it off to around £600 as Mahr al-Fatimi, inshaAllah. But that is how it all came about.
321 pounds per kilo.
So how much is that per gram?
So about 32p.
32p. Well, that's a big difference then. So times 32p by
That's crop prices.
1500.
by let's say 1470.
Got away with it now. Times 1,400.
470. 1,470.
470.
470. Oh wow. Is that that's quite low, right? Subhanallah. But I think
I'm owed some change now.
so anything between I think probably 500 to 600 inshallah we'll get the reward of the mahr that the Prophet ﷺ and Fatimah agreed.
What about how
Yeah.
people stipulate that put a 1 at the end just because it's supposed to be an odd number? Apparently that's liked or preferable or something. Is that not the case? Usually when they add mahr, they add another pound as a sort of penny because it's an odd number. Something I was told. No?
Odd number, I don't know about that. I don't know. There is a hadith. You've got the saying about adding £1 to make it odd. But there is a hadith about Allah loving odd.
Odd, yeah.
So
Whether they
I don't know whether they base it on that or whether it's some other custom.
There is a lot of custom that we know.
Yeah. But yeah, but people just usually round it off. If you want to add that extra, then I don't know. It's not going against the sunnah as such because it is an odd number. But I don't know whether they base it on that hadith. Inshallah. But nevertheless, after the mahr was fixed, then the Prophet, a few men were called, and a few people. You know what I find incredible, brothers and sisters, is at the Prophet ﷺ's time, it was no big deal if everybody knew or not about weddings taking place and about nikahs taking place. To such an extent that the Prophet ﷺ, he would walk past a companion and he would notice that they've got some saffron and things. You know, they would notice that they're quite well dressed. And he would say, what's wrong? What's the occasion? Ya Rasulullah, I just got married. And then he would make dua for them. And then you think, they didn't even invite the Prophet ﷺ to their wedding, despite living in the same small city. Right? Medina was so small then. It's the size of the current masjid, maximum, at most, right, in Medina. And the Prophet ﷺ wouldn't be invited. And there's so much emphasis now that people even send cards back home, wedding invitations, just for the sake of saying that we invited them at least. And they're not going to come. Take an 8-hour flight to come to a wedding, no chance. Subhanallah. There's so much emphasis on things like that. Allahu Akbar. And on the flip side, if someone doesn't invite us, then we sometimes get offended. Alright, and that shouldn't be the case. Allahu Akbar. So the Prophet ﷺ, he did the nikah for his daughter Fatimah, the 8 dates, and then Fatimah, she left for Ali radiallahu anhu's house that day. Right? And the Prophet ﷺ gave some gifts, which Fatima narrates, subhanAllah. He gave her a bracelet, he gave her pots, believe it or not, subhanAllah. So that's from the Sunnah. He gave her, what do you call it? Bedding, mattress and things to sleep on. Allahu Akbar. So those things are not unusual when you gift your own daughter things like that, right? Provided, it's just crazy. I don't know how it is in other cultures, but in our culture, it's ridiculous. When you give your daughter away, and you give a whole house with it as well, at the same time, which is very sad. Fridge, it's crazy. Is that in your culture as well? So you give your daughter, and then you have to give fridge, freezer, and furniture, and
TV, sofa, bed,
sofas. It's crazy. It's honestly crazy. The Prophet ﷺ gave gifts like that, but it wasn't to that level where his people had to give stuff as well. SubhanAllah. Whatever you want to give as gifts is fine. But when it comes to something that then you have to give it, then to me it doesn't seem like a gift. When you think you have to give it, otherwise you're going to be, frowned upon. Allahu Akbar. May Allah keep us simple on the Sunnah, inshallah. There's a lot more barakah in that. Allahu Akbar. There's just too much money being spent nowadays in weddings. Allahu Akbar. But that was the marriage with Ali radiallahu anhu, by Fatimah radiallahu anha. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he had such a beautiful relationship with both of them, as a father and a father-in-law. There are times, Ali radiallahu anhu, he narrates a beautiful hadith, that once we were both sat there, and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam looked at Fatimah, and he said to her that he said to me, Fatimah is the most beloved to me. And then he's looked at Fatimah, and he said to Fatimah, Ali is the most honorable to me. And he would have this sort of conversation, trying to please both of them and keep them both happy. Allahu Akbar. But Fatimah, she worked tirelessly after marriage. Tirelessly. And we say work tirelessly because there's a beautiful hadith, really beautiful hadith, which we have to act upon. And we've mentioned this before, right? She used to work so hard, when we wash in innocent organs, because of the water, what happens to our hands sometimes? The water is very hard here, so your hands get all dry sometimes, right? So Fatima, she used to work so hard that her hands became coarse because she used to knead the dough herself, right? She used to cook, she used to do the clean, she used to do a lot of the housework. So her hands became so hard, Fatima radiallahu anha. So she said to Ali radiallahu anha, why don't you go to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and ask him for a servant, someone to come and help out in the house, because I'm just having to do too much. So then Ali radiallahu anha, because obviously it's her father. So if a daughter goes and complains to her father, I'm having to do this, right, at my in-laws. Because it is her in-laws, isn't it? I'm having to do this at my in-laws. Then what do you think the father's going to do?
Pack your bags for back.
Do we have a father-in-law here? Yeah. What would you do? If your daughter said, I'm having to work my socks off and it's just too much. Because, unfortunately, before we get your response, there's just so much interference from the in-laws. Right? But let's see the wise answer here. You're coming home. Now, what is it with this coming home statement? It's still going on. Subhanallah. Right? Still going on. Right? So you'd say, are you saying that because of the football, or are you?
No, I'm joking.
Some father-in-laws would. Any opportunity, they'll go home. Any opportunity, they're unhappy with something, they'll go home. Allah, but may Allah keep us steadfast, Fatimah, number one, she didn't go to the Prophet ﷺ. She sent, and that is such a wise thing to do. She didn't go to the Prophet ﷺ because then it would seem as a complaint, wouldn't it? She sent Ali radiallahu anhu, that you go to the Prophet ﷺ and see, and with him going, it would be as if they're seeking help, not a complaint. Allahu Akbar. So he went to the Prophet ﷺ, Ya Rasulullah, we're struggling a little bit. Fatima, she needs a little bit of help. Can you give us a servant, someone to help out at home? So then the Prophet ﷺ, he came to Fatima and Ali radiallahu anhu, and he sat them down, and in the hadith, when he came, they were leaning back and they sat upright, and the Prophet ﷺ said, no, relax. So they sat back down again. That's the detail in these ahadith, subhanAllah. So he said, you wanted someone to help out, right? I think normal father-in-laws would do anything they can, isn't it, to help out, to make things easy, right? So he said, you wanted someone to help. Shall I give you something better than that? Better than someone coming in to help. So he said, yes, we need a lot of help. So he said, before you go to sleep, recite Subhanallah 33 times, Alhamdulillah 33 times, Allahu Akbar 34 times. That will be enough for you. Allah will look after you. Subhanallah 33, Alhamdulillah 33, Allahu Akbar 34 times before going to sleep. Allah will look after everything. Allahu Akbar. Ali radiallahu anh says, from that day I never gave it up. Every single night I would recite those. Every single night. And Allah looked after us. If we say it with the faith, and the Prophet ﷺ generalized it, Allah will look after everything. You're going through any difficulty, you're going through a hard time at home, you're going through a hard time at the in-laws, because that is what Fatimah was going through, right? Any difficulty, that Allah will take care of it. The important thing is, subhanAllah, the best aid for us is things like adhkar and dhikr and tasbihat. We sometimes forget about this. And the Prophet ﷺ reminded them that if you're going through difficulty, turn to who? Turn to Allah. Because Allah mentions, الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَتَطْمَئِنُّ قُلُوبُهُمْ بِذِكْرِ اللَّهِ أَلَا بِذِكْرِ اللَّهِ تَطْمَئِنُّ الْقُلُوبُ. You're going through any difficulty, remembering Allah will bring you contentment. So you might be sat here thinking, I need work done in the house. How on earth is Subhanallah, Alhamdulillah, Allahu Akbar going to get the work done? Doesn't make sense, does it? But Allah will make it easy. That's the point of that hadith. See, it will be less of a burden. Doesn't mean that someone's going to miraculously come and clean up and cook. But Allah will make it easy, less burdensome. And that is a guarantee. Guarantee. If you do that tonight, tomorrow's chores will be a whole lot easier. Guarantee. Because the Prophet ﷺ said it. We have to have it, that level of conviction, brothers and sisters. So if we do that every night, and that is why, what do we call that tasbih after we pray salah? Tasbih? What do we call it? Subhanallah, alhamdulillah. It's got a name, isn't it? Tasbih Fatimah, sometimes we call it. And it's because of that hadith. Because that tasbih was given to Fatimah, radiallahu anha. So that is what we have to try and do, brothers and sisters. And Allah will take care of everything for us. And that is the thing that the Prophet ﷺ gave to Fatimah radiallahu anha. If we fast forward a little bit, subhanallah, Fatimah radiallahu anha, when the Prophet ﷺ was close to passing away, when he was close to dying, Fatimah radiallahu anha was there with him, alongside Aisha radiallahu anha and others. And there was a time, very famous incident, Fatimah was there, so he called, the Prophet ﷺ called Fatimah towards him, and he whispered something. And Fatimah started crying, and she went back. And then he called her again, come here. And he whispered something. And this time Fatimah started laughing. Right? And this would be a little bit strange. Because sometimes, I don't know if you know people like this. 1 minute they're laughing and 1 minute they're crying. And 1 minute they're crying and then within a few seconds they're laughing. Right? My daughter has these sudden phases where she's laughing her head off and then suddenly she'll just get angry over what I have no idea. Subhanallah. Right? People do that. So the likes of Aisha who were there, they were watching her, and Aisha was so intrigued to know what's wrong with Fatima. Why is it that she's crying and then suddenly she starts laughing? Subhanallah. So afterwards, Aisha radiallahu anha, she narrates this hadith that I was so intrigued to know what the Prophet ﷺ whispered to Fatima. So I asked Fatima, what did the Prophet ﷺ say to you? Fatima said, I can't tell you. I can't tell you. I have to keep it to myself. And she kept asking and kept asking and kept asking till eventually Fatima said, okay. The first time I went to the Prophet ﷺ, the Prophet ﷺ said to me, this year, the last Ramadan, every Ramadan, Jibreel comes to me and we recite Quran. The whole Quran is recited. Right? Every year when Jibreel comes, we go over the Quran. This year, Ramadan, when Jibreel came, we went over it twice. And looking at my state now, I feel I'm not going to recover from this. And I'm going to return to Allah. Right? Everything just makes sense. I'm going to return to Allah. So Fatima started crying. She started crying. And then she went away. So then the Prophet ﷺ called her. And he whispered something. What did he whisper? He said, but you are going to be the first one to join me from my family. You're going to be the first one after I pass away. So she started laughing. What was she laughing at? The fact that she's going to die. Right? So look at how confident and blessed she feels that she's going to die with the Prophet ﷺ, shortly after the Prophet ﷺ. That is the confidence. If someone was to tell you, if you were to have a family member, and let's put this into perspective, if your family member, absolutely right, if your family member was dying, and without sounding too frank, and they were to say, you're next, you're going to die soon, you're not going to laugh. I won't laugh. Because you're going to think, what? Because we have this natural fear of dying. Because we don't feel ready. We feel we need to do more. Subhanallah. But that's just naturally how we feel. Should we feel like that is a different question. We naturally feel like that. But Fatima, that just shows her character as a believer. She was happy with that. Allah wants to take my life, alhamdulillah. Right? Because she had lived a good life, Allah. When Allah give us a good death, brothers and sisters, it's a scary thing when we think about things like that. It's a reality, whether we like it or not, Allahu Akbar. And she was confident. And within 5 months, she passed away, of the Prophet ﷺ passing away. Within 5 months. How old was she? No more than 25. No more than 25. Alright, very young, she passed away. She was ill even when the Prophet ﷺ was going through the last phases. But she passed away through illness. Allahu Akbar. But the one thing that I find incredible, before she passed away, she already had it written in her will. Right? She had it written in her will, Jazakallah, that, and on that point we have, all of us should have a will, inshallah, or at least something written, in writing. Right? What is to happen with things that we own. It's very important in Islam. The Prophet ﷺ emphasized to that extent, if you are traveling, you should not leave your home until you have a will written. If you are traveling on a long distant journey, you should not leave your home until you have something in writing that if you don't return, this is what's going to happen. This is what you want to happen. You could write, this is how I want the janazah to be. This is who I want to wash the body. This is who I want to lead. Fatima had all of this written in her will.
Believe it or not. Can't contradict the Sharia, obviously.
No, can't contradict the Sharia. Right? It's not obligatory upon the executors. Is it executors?
Yeah.
It's not obligatory upon them to act upon the will in Islam. Alright? So if a person writes in their will, I want my body transported to Pakistan or Bangladesh, it's not obligatory upon me who's reading that will to do that. Alright? That is the important thing. However, Fatima radiallahu anha, she wrote in her will that she wants Asma bint Umays to wash her body. And the other thing she said in her will, subhanallah, was I want Asma bint Umays to wash my body, and I want her to wash it in the evening. And I want the janazah to be in the evening. And I want to be buried in the evening so that my body doesn't be visible. Subhanallah. That is the modesty. Right? I want everything to be done quickly and discreetly. Allahu Akbar. And that is how it was done. She was given a bath by Asma, the ghusl, the janazah was led. There are different narrations as to who led the janazah. Most opinions say it was Ali radiallahu anhu, and it was done in the evening as per her request. Allahu Akbar. And that was in much of a few things about Fatima radiallahu anha, brothers and sisters. But on the point of the will, like Fatima wrote, it's very important. It's something that doesn't have a lot of emphasis in this day and age. That there are ways to write a will, and there are solicitors and organizations who help write an Islamic will as well, which is recognized in this country, right? There's even one in St. Albans. I don't know if they still do, but there's one in St. Albans on Hatfield Road. They assist with writing wills, right, from an Islamic perspective, right? What's it called? Sony and so forth. So they do Islamic wills as well. Others are obviously available.
They are in Maltings now.
Is it Maltings now? Subhanallah. So those who haven't, it's very important that we do it. If not that, at least have something in writing in place. Because the last thing we want, after a person dies, there's two things that happen. One is, there's so much fitna as to who gets what, right? And the other is, nobody has a clue what to do. That's one of two things always happens. If you have something written in place, then that makes everyone's life a whole lot easier, subhanAllah. Because then people become too sensitive to what to do, subhanAllah. So it's crucial that if you haven't, then get it written, inshallah. If you want to even write something and you want to even get it double checked by myself, I'm more than happy. Inshallah, those who don't have something, inshallah. Is that okay, inshallah? Jazakumullah. Any questions? Yes.
So, could I just ask you on the specification of the will,
Yeah.
what proportion should be left to the wife?
What proportion to be left to?
The
Wife.
I won't have time for that. Do you know why? Because there's different scenarios based on who you leave behind, etc., etc., etc. If we have time tomorrow, no, next week, we need a full session for that. I don't know if you want to cover it next week or if you want to do a male companion. Huh? Did we do it? Right. So it's probably on the website. As usual. No, but next week, inshallah, we'll cover it very, very briefly. Next week, inshallah. It depends on different someone who's alive and who's not, who the deceased dependents are, and so forth. So it's like a whole list. There's so many people who are eligible, but then each one gets crossed out, and each one minuses and minuses and minuses. So it's a very long table, inshallah. But we could try and go through it if we have time next week, inshallah, after the next male companion, inshallah. Yeah.
Maulana, is there
Yeah.
context on the hadith that you said, the Prophet ﷺ said, whoever makes Fatima angry makes me angry.
If you don't mind.
Whoever makes Fatima angry makes
The
me
reason
angry.
why some people do use that against us, especially when it comes to the Battle of Camp.
Very good question,
So
inshallah.
that's why I want to know, is there context behind that?
There is a context behind that, inshallah, next week. Inshallah. Can you remind me next week, inshallah? Before we start, inshallah, then we'll do it. Jazakumullah khair, subhanallah.